now invite the President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Margaret Gardner, to present a candidate for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
Deputy Chancellor. Mrs. Fiona Geminder is a co-owner of Visy, a packaging and recycling company. She is also a director of the Pact Group of Companies and the Kin Group of Companies. Mrs. Geminder is an alumna of Monash University, having gained a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology in 1985 and then a Bachelor of Laws in 2006. In business, Mrs. Geminder is focused on innovation, new technology, and on developing future generations of expertise in recycling and packaging product development. Pact Group's central business is in the provision of customer-focused sustainable packaging solutions through the conversion of material including plastic resin and steel into packaging and related products for customers in the food, dairy, beverage, chemical, agricultural and industrial sectors in Australia, New Zealand and Asia. Following her parents, Dr. Jean Pratt and the late Dr. Richard Pratt, Mrs. Geminder is also an established member of Melbourne's philanthropic community. She's a closely involved trustee of Pratt Philanthropies, through which the Pratt family gives to causes including health, the arts, education, Indigenous advancement, the environment, and also to Jewish charities. In October 2017, Mrs. Geminder and her mother, Dr. Jean Pratt, represented the Pratt Foundation as hosts for the Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull, and the Australian, New Zealand and Israeli delegations and guests at the Twilight Ceremony in Israel, which commemorated the centenary of the Australian Light Horse Charge at Beersheba in World War I. In her own philanthropic initiatives, Mrs. Geminder has taken a particular interest in funding Monash University's law faculty programs that partner with Victorian Legal Aid and in providing invaluable support for the university's Australian Centre for Jewish Civilisation. There are many more things we can say about Mrs. Fiona Geminder, but she will say something in her speech. Deputy Chancellor, it gives me the greatest pleasure to present to you for admission to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, Fiona Sarah Geminder.
With the authority of Council, I admit you, Fiona Sarah Geminder, to the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. I now have much pleasure in inviting Dr. Fiona Geminder to deliver the graduation address.
Thank you, Deputy Chancellor, Mr. Shane Buggle, President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Margaret Gardner, Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Professor Sharon Pickering, and good afternoon, members of the faculty, ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, and especially the new graduates. It feels a bit like a royal wedding here. This is a wonderful honour, and I'm very grateful to the university. Sitting at my first Monash graduation ceremony some 30 years ago, I could never have imagined that one day I'd be standing up here receiving an honorary doctorate, and addressing this graduate audience. It's a highlight of my life. I will never forget it, and I will always be both grateful and proud. I know what it's like to be sitting here where you are, listening to some honorary doctorate drone on about the meaning of life. So I promise that today I'll keep things both brief and hopefully relevant. As you heard earlier, my family's connection to Monash goes back a long way. Several family members have attended Monash, and my nephew Jake is currently studying commerce here. Through the Pratt Foundation, my family has been supportive of the university and donated a number of major gifts over the years. But today, I want to talk to you about a gift that Monash gave to me, a gift that I will have forever. All of you graduates here today have received the same gift, a Monash education. There is no better preparation for helping you embark on your life's journey ahead. So as someone who has sat where you are, who now has a few post-Monash decades on the clock, I want to share some of my own pre- and post-Monash journey with you, and perhaps offer a little advice about navigating the path down the road. Because although it might not seem like it to you right now, I can tell you that while the years between your 20s and your 50s feels like an eternity when you're looking forward, they feel like a blink of the eye when viewed in reverse. My first undergraduate degree at Monash, Arts Sociology, led to an early career in advertising, including working in London and New York, where I met my darling husband, Ruffy. In those days, advertising was a very hip industry, and New York was its epicentre. It was a ton of creative fun and not subject to anything like the competitive cost and technology pressures facing it today. But even though I loved advertising and New York, at some stage I was always going to join the family business, Visy. Visy was founded by my grandparents and their original partners in 1948, and has grown to become the world's largest privately owned packaging and recycling company. We have more than 5,000 employees in Australia and sales of more than $4 billion. I share ownership of the business equally with my brother Anthony and my sister Eloise, who are both here today. Going into a large family-owned business as both a female and a third-born child of the patriarch and matriarch, Richard and Jean Pratt, hi Mum, it's not as easy as it might sound. You have to prove yourself, not only to your family, your managers, and your fellow employees, but also to yourself. You're always acutely aware that unless you do an outstanding job, people will think you're only there because your family owns the business. I was often tempted to say that I wasn't only there because my family owned business. I was only there because I own a third of it. I'm committed to the business, not just involved in it. The difference between being involved and committed is like a breakfast of eggs and bacon. The chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. Anyway, in the early days, I was able to use some of my advertising and marketing experience to help modernise Visy's marketing and brand image, which had pretty much been stuck in the 1950s. The most obvious outcome was probably helping establish Visy Recycling's position as one of Australia's best-known recycling companies. I also developed a passion for visiting Visy factories and our customers, something I picked up from my dad. And I'm just as passionate today as I was then, back more than 20 years ago. But it wasn't until two things happened in the early 2000s that I decided to return to Monash and do a law degree. My life changed forever. The first thing that happened was that my babysitter sacked me, or perhaps more accurately, that with us having gotten my three oldest children through the early highest care stage, the babysitter and I agreed that the job just wasn't big enough for the both of us. There was no way I was going to lose my wonderful babysitter, so that meant getting shoved out of the nest and getting even more heavily involved at work. The next thing that happened was that Vizzy got into trouble with the ACCC for an alleged price-fixing cartel. That hit me completely out of the blue. Never before had I felt personally involved in or affected by a legal matter, let alone one so huge. I struggled to comprehend it. Sometimes I felt like I was in free fall, at other times like I was swimming in a giant ocean. Thousands of questions raced through my head, but I had no frame of reference. Exactly what were we being accused of? What were the legal, family, and personal consequences? What legal avenues were open to us, and what should we take? My feelings of confusion and disempowerment were made even worse because in the early days of the scandal, everyone I asked about it, even lawyers, seemed to be giving me different answers. And that's when I decided to empower myself and enrol again at Monash to do a law degree. Going back to uni brought its own set of challenges. For a start, at 37, I was almost twice the age of most people in the course. And they all seemed so much more groovy and sophisticated than me. I don't mind admitting that I felt intimidated. I would sometimes resort to eating my sushi rolls at lunch in the female toilets, so as not to draw too much attention to what I saw as my mature age, dorky self. Of course, I realise now that eating lunch at the toilets probably made me look even more weird and dorky, at least to the students who saw me. But that didn't seem to occur to me back then. Anyway, I did settle into the course, paying particular attention to the trade practices law, but really enjoying every aspect of learning about the law. While I was doing second year, I had my fourth child, Samantha. I can still remember about 6 weeks after having Sammy, I had to sit a torts law exam, and the supervisor came up to me at the start of the exam and said, "Fiona, I understand you've just had a baby. Is there anything we can do?" And I said, "Are you kidding? I'm just about to have 3 solid hours of absolutely uninterrupted time to myself to sit this exam. I'm having the time of my life." I loved everything about doing law at Monash, but the truly life-changing part of studying law for me came in my final year when I began my work at the Monash Oakley Legal Service. Monash Oakley Legal is a partnership between the Monash Law School and Victorian Legal Aid. The service helps those dealing with a wide variety of problems, including family law, debt, road accidents, tenancy disputes, and police prosecutions. The way it works is that final year law students, under the supervision of experienced lawyers, not only provide legal advice, they help to run the service. When I joined the Oakley Centre, I felt like I was doing real law for the first time, working with real people who needed my help. I felt that I was making a real difference. The cases I worked on taught me a huge amount about the rich tapestry of human life and the role which the law plays in it. Whether it's a man facing orders to remove 150 pet birds from his house, or a small cafe owner facing closure because a broken fridge had caused food contamination, or someone facing eviction because she'd fallen behind in her rent. These were real people These people needed help, not only in legal aid, but emotionally, and something that legal aid could provide. It may seem strange, but I could really identify with those people because I too had felt what it was like to face a crushing legal problem and not to know what to do. As a result, I developed a passionate interest in the vital role which legal aid plays in our society. So I've taken up support for legal aid as a cause close to my heart. And I'll continue to support Oakley and other legal aid centres in the future. You could say legal aid has become a thing for me. I'm also passionate about the issues of youth homelessness and gender equality in the workplace. I recently launched a gender equality drive at Visi because I was horrified to learn that only 13% of Visi's workforce is female. That's less than half the Australian average for manufacturing companies of 27%. Clearly, we need to address the imbalance. But to be frank, I wasn't motivated by any feminist ideology. I was motivated by current ideology. Visi may be one of the most modern companies in the world in terms of manufacturing technology, but it was out of date and out of step in terms of gender balance. In addition, for me, it's just common sense that companies who are supplying customers will understand those customers better if their workforces have a better gender balance. I could go on and regale you with more stories about my own life after Monash, but at the beginning, I promised you two things: to keep it short and make it relevant. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask all of you graduating today, what's next? Do you have a plan, or are you going to go with the flow? Are you apprehensive about the future or full of confidence? Do you know what you want to be? Will you be looking for a job, or perhaps starting your own micro business? What sort of ambassadors for Monash will you be? What sort of ambassadors for your family, for Australia, or for your country of origin? You may not know the answers to any of these questions yet. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. Because my advice to you today is not to overplan things. Yes, have a goal in mind, but be flexible and open to opportunities. If there's something you're passionate about, immerse yourself in it. Life becomes a whole lot more interesting and satisfying when you get involved with something that you believe in. You don't have to strive to change the world or be number one at something. You just have to get involved. A wise man I knew, my dad, said that more than 90% of being a success is just about turning up. If you don't turn up, you won't be there when the opportunities present themselves. That goes for both your everyday work and your personal life as well. Turning up means being responsible, helping out, making your own luck, making the most of your opportunities, matching inspiration with perspiration, all those cliches. They often say in business you have to look after your customers. I've expanded that thought into a philosophy of believing that everybody I come into contact with is my customer. It doesn't matter if they're friends, family, work colleagues, business associates, or someone you've just met. Treating people as you would a really good customer makes for better relationships in every aspect of your life. It's just common sense and common courtesy. That's probably the main thought I'd like to leave you with today. If you try to do everything that's common sense and common courtesy, if you treat people well and leave nothing out, you don't really have to do anything profound. You can still make a difference to the world just by being your best self. Because when you're being your best self, opportunities will present themselves, and often from the least expected sources. It will be up to you alone whether you see these opportunities and take advantage of them, or whether you sit back and watch. A Monash education has provided you with the best skills available, and now it's over to you. So congratulations to all graduating students. Thanks again to Monash for this great, great honour, and best wishes to everyone here today. Thank you for listening.